Hello and welcome to the Prepared Mind channel. I'm John, your host. It is Monday morning for you, and it's somewhere in the middle of the night for me. Got back from a long road trip, but I had an interesting occurrence happen. I'd like to tell you about it. It's an American tragedy, and we're all living through it. But earlier I had the opportunity to experience this through the eyes of some other folks, and they're included on the thumbnail. Those are two real people there. We'll call him W and we'll call her T. So I was enjoying myself, my little trip, just enjoying a scotch and a stogie at a casino, and these two walked in, and he's got a shirt. It says Trump 2020, make Democrats cry again, or something like that. And I thought it was pretty funny. So I bought them a round of drinks, and then they came over to my table, and they wanted to just sit and chat. They had no idea who I was. They started to tell me a story, and I said, hey, I'll make you famous. Would you mind being interviewed for a channel on the internet? And they said, sure, why not? So they sat down and give you a little background. The young man is 22 and the woman is 23. They're the parents of 3 children. He is an Army vet. Both of them have parents who are veterans. And we were just discussing some politics. And they shared with me some of their experience as young Americans. Both of them are white, as evidenced, and both of them are, well, she was more politically neutral, T was, but W was pretty outspoken. And I said, so you're wearing that shirt? He goes, oh yeah, whenever I go out in public with it, people often refuse to serve me, right, or make a sale. Right? They give him a hard time over it, and it was very interesting. So I said, well, tell me some of your other experiences. And we were just talking. Now, I haven't had a chance to go background check them and check the information, but they shared with me some unique experiences. The first of which was that being parents of 3 small kids, right, they're still buying diapers. And they said, this is crazy. In Reno and in other areas around Reno, they said illegal immigrants are being given money by the government. And I said, is it state money or federal? And they said they weren't sure. But what they were noticing was that they couldn't buy diapers. And the reason they couldn't, this seems obscene, it seems ridiculous. They couldn't buy diapers because there were none left on the shelves. Now, he's an Army vet, and he's got a good job in skilled labor and construction now, and she is a skilled person in the medical industry. So their combined income puts them into the middle class. And they still can't buy diapers. And you're going to say, John, why not? Well, the reason is because the illegal immigrants would come into the Walmarts with these cards, with this money that the government gave them. They have no Social Security, no identification, but they're given money. And they would fill 2 or 3 shopping carts each with items, diapers, anything non-perishable, clothing, whatever they could get their hands on that they needed. Well, the mother said, look, I just need 1 little bag of diapers because I've got kids and I need them. And the illegal immigrant refused to give them up. And she asked, why wouldn't you give me any? And she said, well, because we take all of this and we're sending it back to Mexico. So even as far north as Reno, the illegal immigrants are taking our money, they're buying merchandise, and keeping other Americans from getting items because they're basically clearing the shelves when they get to the store. And then they're sending this wealth in the form of assets back to Mexico. So your tax dollars are being shipped back to Mexico through this program. And I said, I've never heard of this. And they said, most people won't talk about it. I said, well, I'll talk about it. They said, no, most people won't talk about it. We try talking about it with people and they pretend like it's not a problem, like it's not happening. And I've never heard of this, right? And I'm pretty much in the fucking loop, right? But I don't go down the diaper aisle anymore. But whatever they can't get in Mexico, they come up here illegally, they get money, they buy what they need, and then they send it back. And it was very fascinating to hear this, right? That the illegals are creating hardships for Americans by participating and taking advantage of a system, right? And I said, okay, that's interesting, you know, and will you allow me to use your story? And they said yes. And can I use your picture for the thumbnail? And they said yes. And we continued this conversation over drinks. Right? We discussed some of his Army exploits and, you know, enjoyed a couple of drinks. When I said, well, what else is going on? What else have you noticed? And, you know, he just said the amount of, for his age, the amount of prejudice that's going around is incredible. I said, I haven't experienced that. I said, the people I know that wear a MAGA hat, you know, Make America Great Again hat, or a Trump shirt, they don't get their asses kicked. They don't get yelled at. They don't get denied service. You know, Vaughn on Backcountry Prepper Channel, he's, you know, rather famous for wearing his Make America Great hat into Starbucks in Southern California and not really getting a lot of trouble. But these younger folks, they're dealing with this. Now, like I said, she's in the medical industry. Now, she had tattoos. You can see obviously from the picture that she's got pink hair. And she went in to apply for a job. Has an education. Both of them are articulate, well-spoken, very polite. And she said, you know, I went in, and at the time she went in, she had purple hair and tattoos. And they said, well, you've got to cover your tattoos. You can't show them. And I know a lot of people who are older, my age and older, you know, we're not as into tattoos as the younger generation is. But because of a tattoo, that is some ink under the skin, and colored hair, she was told she couldn't have the job unless she covered her tattoos and dyed her hair. So she did that. She said she dyed it black. She went back to the job, and they told her that's not a natural hair color for her. And I thought, that's just bizarre. So you've got to wear a hair color that's natural to you according to your employer. And you're not allowed to have tattoos, which is coloring of the skin. So that to me sounds prejudicial. That to me sounds hypocritical. It's very hypocritical because you can come across the border having lots of color in your skin. You can dye your hair whatever color you want. You can be here illegally and the government gives you money. Yet these two folks have to bust their ass, work really hard, right? And they get treated prejudicially by their employers, or she did by her employer, and just trying to get necessities at a store. You can't get if you show up at a time when the migrants get off of work and they've got all of their government freebie handout cards. And I said, well, what are they doing up here? They said, well, they come up and they're given this money. And they're not even working yet. They're supposed to be migrant workers, but they're just given money. And the first thing they do is go to the store and spend it. And they said, look, we work in Reno, but we can't get an apartment. And I said, why can't you get an apartment? You both have good jobs. You're middle income, literally making, you know, approximately $100,000 a year between the two of them. And they said, well, we can't get an apartment because there's a housing shortage because all of these illegals are up here. And every place we go, they say they're full of these migrant workers, these illegals. You know, the So the apartment owners can't deny the immigrants, let's just call them that, the illegal immigrants, housing, so they fill up the housing. Well, real Americans, they can't get housing. Real Americans can't get other necessities at stores when these illegals are doing this. You know, and so someone who is a left-leaning person, I'm sure, would say, well, they can just go to another store. They can go find it somewhere else, right? The Mexican immigrants only know Walmart, I guess, right? They could make that claim. Well, that doesn't stand in my book because, right, you shouldn't be allowed to come in and just sweep everything off the shelf. But I guess they can. And who's going to stop them? Because that would be profiling. That would be prejudicial. That would be racist to try and stop these people. Right? So this couple was sharing with me story after story. And they weren't there for sympathy. They didn't show up because I'm John doing interviews. I was just enjoying a nice little scotch, relaxing when they walked in. Right? They had no axe to grind with me. You know, I didn't have cameras and lights. They just sat down and just started telling me this story, you know, and being the naturally curious individual I am, I just kept asking questions. I said, so you got 3 kids, huh? I go, how are they? And they said, well, you know, they're great, wonderful kids, nice. They had a beautiful picture of them all together. They showed me, and I said, well, you know, what's the deal with this one daughter of yours? They said, well, she was born with a heart condition. And I said, that must be expensive. And they said, let us tell you about how expensive it is. Because the child was diagnosed with the heart condition before she was born, they can't get insurance for the baby. Even though Obamacare promises that you can get new insurance with a pre-existing condition. Well, they can't. Even though she won, the mother works in the medical field, right? They can't get health care coverage. So everything they pay for this child with a heart condition comes out of pocket. And every checkup costs $500. And so they can get 1 or 2 checkups a month. Now the good news is that they said that it's a self-healing condition. So those of you in the medical industry may be guessing exactly what this child was born with. So they're paying $500 to $1,000 a month out of pocket for a visit to the doctor to check on their baby's heart. And there's no insurance for them. They can't get insurance for them. So I'm asking myself, how in God's green earth is that access? How is it that we're supposed to be guaranteed access when they can't get access, right? Not with insurance. So it was an interesting story. And again, why would they tell me this unless it was true? So I wasn't able to check up, and I'm not going to. Right? This is an anecdotal story. It was just interesting, and they weren't all sad about it. They weren't complaining to the extent like, please help us out or anything. They were just talking, you know, people talking to each other. And I was shocked. They can't get health care coverage, insurance, because the child was born knowing that she would have a heart. And I said, the way you're saying this is it sounds like the doctor was recommending that you have an abortion. And she said, yeah, that's what they recommended because, you know, it's just, that's what they wanted. And because they knew she had a pre-existing condition prior to her birth, they're saying you cannot have health care insurance. And it just, to me, it baffled me. The story was baffling. Now, if you're in the medical profession, you might be saying to yourself, that's not loud, that's not legal, that's not right. That's these people's story. Now, maybe they're getting jerked around by a hospital, but they're having to experience the financial difficulties, right? The apparent prejudicial and hypocritical treatment, right? And they said, you know, these illegals, they get all the medical they want, right? But they can't get it for themselves. So it almost seems like the governments, whether it's state or federal, is more interested in taking care of illegals than their own citizens. More importantly, these citizens are taxpayers, they're employed, and one of them is a veteran. And still, no help. No assistance. You know, it was really a tragic story for me to listen to and talk to these people. And like I said, they weren't sad, we're just bullshitting. But inside, you know, I'm feeling it in here. You know, I'm pretty pissed off. You know, I didn't go out looking for this story. I just went on a little road trip. Just wanted to go, you know, have some fun. And finally, we got to the point where I said, so what do you think is going on? And they said, well, you know, it looks like the government, the Democrats, are pushing for a civil war. And I said, civil war, huh? And you know that I like to use the phrase partisan war. I'm going to try and turn this light on. Get some light on the subject. There we go. I like to refer to what's coming as a partisan war because of the Democrats and their divide and conquer along racial lines, gender lines, economic lines, political lines. They're pitting us against each other. So when shit hits the fan, who are you going to take it out on? Who are you going to fight? Right? The people in your 10-mile radius. So being the John that I am, you know, I talk to them and I let them know what my channel's about and what we talk about and discuss and shit hitting the fan. And I gave them some pointers as best I could about having all the necessities, having them in place. And this young family does, thankfully. They're not preppers so much, but I said, where do you live? And they said, well, we live in the city. I said, how are you going to take care of food, water, shelter, clothing? And they said, well, we're going to have to leave. I said, so you've got a bug out plan, right? And it didn't seem like they had a real solid plan, but they just knew they needed to get out of there. I said, well, you need to finish your plans up, right? You need to figure out how you can get to your parents' houses. Make sure your parents, who are the vets, are prepared as well. So I gave them as many pointers and helpful hints as I could. I just said, I'm just an old guy who's thought about this, you know, longer than you've been alive. But it was quite an interesting conversation, quite a tragedy. This is what's happened to America, right? And they're not, right? They're both educated to a degree, and they're both working very well, these adults. And they've got a family, 3 young children, very young children. And this is what they're facing. They're facing prejudicial treatment. They're seeing preference for people who aren't citizens. And they see what's coming for them. Even in their, I don't want to say, let's just say lack of maturity. They don't have tons of adult experience. They're just starting out in life. But they're already feeling the sting of what the likes of Ocasio-Cortez and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, right? And he had some harsh words for those people, and I said, you know, I know you're talking to me and you, and we're safe here, but I said, please be careful in public what you say, because some people may turn on you. Right? You can get in trouble for the shit you say, so be very careful. Again, I gave them words of caution, and I let them know, hey, you know, if you're in the city when stuff goes down, stay out of the fray. Right? Don't let your army experience lead you into a situation that could risk your life and your families. You know, protect yourselves and stay out of the troubles. Right? It was quite a conversation. It was very sad in a lot of ways, but it was great to meet some young people that still have hope, right? And they're still trying, but they know that it's a hopeless situation, and they're still doing it, and it's admirable. They're still pushing, right, to try and have a normal life. But, you know, both of them were frustrated at how difficult it was and how difficult it is for them to go just to try and make it through a day. Right? And I said, well, you know, why are you wearing that shirt? You know, it's causing you trouble and difficulties. And, you know, at his age and with his perspective, He's trying to wake people up. He's a 22-year-old young man, veteran, father of 3, employed. And he says, I like to ask people questions. I like to ask them about their politics and see if they know what's going on. And then he does his best to educate them. Extremely admirable on his part. And he's taking a lot of shit for it. That is the quality of American. That's the quality of men and women that we want in our country. Quality. You know, and what are they facing? They're facing retribution for having a political opinion that's unpopular. He's facing retribution for trying to educate people. Right? But he's still willing to do it. And that, I think, is part of the American spirit that's been lost by most people. They're afraid to stand up for themselves. They're afraid to say what's right. They're afraid to do the right thing. And I said, hey, don't lose your job trying to be a fucking hero. And he says, well, at work I don't say anything. But in my public life or private life, away from work, you know, he says he tries helping. So, you know, they believe there's going to be a civil war. Civil war. I said, well, unless you're in Washington, D.C. or a state capital, it's not a civil war. It's going to be a partisan war. And everybody who's opposed to your perspective, they're going to be gunning for you. So it was just an affirmation or a reaffirmation to me that people in their right mind see what's coming. And so we talked about propaganda. And I said, you know, these people, they're taught, he goes, I don't understand it. I don't understand how illogical they are. I don't understand how they can't see the facts. And I said, well, if you start with a lie, they're taught a lie. And so they start believing the lie. That's these leftists and the uninformed public who watches, you know, CNN and believes it. I said, well, they start with a lie. And now you're living a lie, and you add another lie to it. And you add more untruths, and then some falsities. I said, pretty soon you've built lies upon lies upon lies. I said, they can't see the truth. They can't understand how socialism is wrong, and how taxing you and giving it to illegal immigrants is wrong, because they're building lies on top of propaganda on top of lies. I said, but let me ask you this, young man. W. He's a nice fella. They were very attentive when I spoke, and I was trying to be as attentive as I could listening to them. But they were both talking to me at once. I had W on the left, and I had T on the right, and they would just start, they needed to tell somebody, this is so wrong, and we're so excited to talk to somebody who understands. I said, but understand, all of those lies is like they're built on top, and so there's no reality, there's no foundation in truth, or fact, or natural law. There's none of that for them. So when shit hits the fan, when there's a disruption in power, or fuel, or food, these people are going to lose their shit. They're going to lose their fucking minds. And they're like, oh shit, yeah. It's not like they're going to readjust and reformulate their minds to what reality really is. The reality of reality, which is shit hits the fan. When everything comes down, they're not going to have a foundation to understand how to take care of themselves or how to solve problems. Their ideas are that it's wrong to be middle class, it's wrong to be white, it's wrong to be American, it's wrong to work hard and expect to keep your own money. Right? Those people aren't going to come to that realization. These people out here that are not preppers, that are ding-dongs, they're going to blame people who have, because that's part of the lie system they've been taught. So I let them know, you're going to be in big trouble. And I said, well, you live in the big city. Right? You live in Reno. I said, is it better to be in a rural environment when shit hits the fan, or a urban environment? And they said, no, definitely rural. I said, well, then that should be part of your plan. Work it out, figure it out, get it out ahead of time. They're great young people. It was really interesting to meet them. Things like that happen all the time, but the depth of exposure to the socialist mayhem that's being caused, that these two young folks have, is amazing. They're really right in the middle of it. I guess maybe from my perspective, living in the city I live in with lots of white privilege and old male age, I don't have to deal with that. Well, actually I don't, right? I don't deal with what these folks are dealing with, because they're starting out new and trying to weed their way through it, and they're running into roadblock after roadblock. They can't get help when they need it. Right? Before they had these jobs, they were dealing with some issues and they couldn't get help from the government. They had Medi-Cal, I believe, and they made too much money. As soon as they made too much money, they lost their benefits. But luckily, they're both employed and they're making enough money to take care of everything. But I said, you're doing really well, the two of you, with these good jobs. And they said, well, we think we should be doing good. It seems like, and they said, for millennials, we're doing really good. Right? They were aware of their age and what they're called. And they're not stupid. They're very smart people. But they're like, for millennials, we're doing good, right? We're not living with our parents. We're not bums. We're doing good. But with all of the taxes, with all of the expenses, even though they've got great insurance, but they can't get insurance for their daughter, right? By the time they get done paying all of their bills, they're the working poor. And they weren't mad about that. They just said it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like the system is working, right? The system's punitive. Anyways, I'm going to continue to ramble on. It was quite an interesting story, so treat it as an anecdotal story. Think about your own experiences that you've dealt with the government system. And then think about how you think what's going on with all of these illegals. Europe is having the same problems with the immigrants out of the Middle East and Africa. They're getting treated like royalty, or rather like preferred citizens, when they're actually not citizens and not contributing at all. I don't know if they're doing the same thing in Europe as they're doing apparently in our Walmarts, where they come in at night and sweep off the shelves and take everything they can, and it's being paid for with your money. I've never seen it because I don't go to Walmart. But I guess it's happening, and it's very, very frustrating. So it's just one more indicator that shit is coming. And that when shit does hit the fan, you can expect a lot of what? Bad behavior. Learned bad behavior from people who are used to taking advantage of the system. So if you think that when the food trucks stop and the fuel trucks stop, that the government's going to hand out food and water and medicine in a fair way, no. No, expect them to give it out to who? The preferential people, the special people. And that's what I would say. I wouldn't expect to get in a food line and get to be treated like a citizen who's paid taxes for over 30 years. I would expect to be put to the end of the line, and illegal immigrants who have been held down by the man to get fed first and cared for first. Because after all, they're special, and I'm just an old white guy. Right? So what are you? And it doesn't matter really whether you're brown or black or yellow or red. It doesn't fucking matter. Right? It shouldn't matter, but it does. If you're an American, you're going to be given second-class citizen status to illegal immigrants. And I'm sure even when shit hits the fan. Now, what really shocked me and surprised me, though, right before I go, is the fact that the woman, the illegal immigrant woman who said she was an illegal immigrant and was waving her card, was asked, can you just give me one of those bags of diapers? You've got 3 shopping carts full of them. And the lady told her, no. I'm sending these to Mexico. What does that tell you about the mentality? There's no shortage of things up here, but they're taking everything they can. They're fucking over everybody, and they don't care. They know what they're doing. They know why they're here. They know how to do it, and they don't care about you. When shit hits the fan, that's what it's going to be about. That's what it's going to be like. Anyways, you guys be cool. It's been a long weekend. I am beat dead tired. I need to get some rest before I got to get up and go to work. You guys, Semper Fi. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. I'll talk to you later.